Hello, everyone. I suppose you've heard a lot of questions this afternoon already, but I request you to bear with just one more. Listen carefully, for this question is way more important than what you've ever heard in the past or what you ever will in the future, even. In fact, it's way more important than when Isaac Newton asked, "Why did the apple fall from the tree?" Think about this. Do you like superpowers? Well, you do, right? So do I. In fact, I love superpowers. Growing up, I always wondered what it was like to have a superpower, to be a super person. I wondered what it was like to be the fastest, the strongest, the wisest, the best. I wondered what it was like to be extraordinary. These topics were, and still are, really fascinating for me. So much so that I constantly catch myself wishing for superpowers, even now. You know what I hate though? Like a lot? I hate the word extraordinary. It annoyed me because everywhere I went and everyone I saw, people just seemed extraordinary. While everything like such unfolded, I just sat there being extra and ordinary. Someone could play the piano with their eyes closed. Someone could jog faster than I could run. Someone could do anything and everything perfectly as if they were intricately trained for every single aspect of their life. You know, that made me really insecure about myself. That made me fixate on the idea of perfection. What took someone else 5 minutes took me an hour. It took me 5 years to play like someone who had played for 3 months, and it drove me crazy because it took my everything just to match other people's something. You see, I thought power, having a superpower, it meant escape. I thought it would be an escape from failure, from mistakes, from awkward silences, from those deafeningly quiet nights that I spent alone. I thought having a superpower would just make everything so much easier, that I would get answers without asking questions, that everything in life would just quietly fall into place and life would finally bend in my favor. You know, there is an incident that I keep taking myself back to when I talk about this. Back in fifth grade, we were assigned a science project, a very unique one, making a volcano. So not common now, is it? Either way, when we were assigned that, I was super excited. I worked day and night to build the perfect volcano for myself. I read every single manual, I watched every single tutorial, and there is no limit to how much effort I put into that. On the day of the submission, I was really eager to show off my work to everyone, to my classmates, to my teachers, to everyone that I saw on the way. But then, the moment that I got into school, the moment that I saw everyone else's, my volcano, the one that looked so perfect at home, just started looking like a plastic bottle that was way too large, wrapped with newspaper that was way too old, poorly painted with a color that did not belong, standing on an old, yellowed cardboard. Everyone else's, it's almost as if they directly got it shipped from Indonesia or even Hawaii. That day, I started getting fixated even more on the idea of perfection. That day, I started yearning for a superpower more than I ever had. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that superpowers were the only way to be special. I compared my ordinary to everyone else's extra. And when I couldn't find a superpower of my own, I just assumed I had no strength whatsoever. But here's the thing. When you start thinking that you need to be born with something special, you stop realizing how much power you can build by yourself. You see, this is what American psychologist Carol Dweck calls the fixed mindset. The idea that our skills are carved in stone. You're either smart or you're not, talented or you're not, extraordinary or just extra and ordinary. That was me. I lived in that mindset for years, believing that my worth was simply measured by the things I was naturally good at, believing that I could not change. I am who I was and I will not be able to change. That was my mindset for years and years, longer than I can remember. But as time passed, as I slowly, steadily continued with this journey, that mindset slowly slipped away. When I could not just fly over obstacles, I learned how to climb them. When I could not control time, I started to learn the beauty of it. When I did not have multiple versions of me working towards different things, I made sure that this singular version of me that exists is capable enough to do anything and everything that got in my way. When I couldn't be the fastest, I became faster. When I couldn't be the wisest, I became wiser. When I couldn't be the best, I took a pause, took a deep breath, and taught myself how to be better. And somewhere along the way, I started realizing something. Not having a superpower, that was my greatest strength all along. Because when you cannot take shortcuts, you learn endurance. When you cannot skip failure, that is when you learn resilience. When you cannot time travel, that is when you learn patience. When you cannot read someone else's mind, that is when you learn empathy. And at the end of the day, is that not what real strength looks like? Not perfection, not speed, not magic, but the raw, persistent, and complex effort of simply being human. You see, now this mindset is what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a shift from a fixed to a growth mindset. The mindset that allows me to think that all of us here are constantly changing, learning, rewiring, becoming our own version of extraordinary, one mistake at a time. So maybe not having a superpower, not being able to fly, not moving mountains, that is what brought me here today. Learning all these things along the way, that is what brought me here today. All that I can do today is not because I was born with the ability to, but because I learned how to. Not because I was naturally gifted, but because along those slow climbs and those awkward steps, I taught myself how to. So now, I don't find myself looking at a shooting star and wishing for a superpower anymore. You know, I don't even hate the word extraordinary anymore. Why? Because now, after all this, I understand. Everyone I thought was extraordinary was probably also just their version of extra and ordinary. Thank you very much.